I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the preseason, postseason, playoffs, and very best basketball podcast. I am Ben Detrick. Jordan Redaelli is on vacation. Andrew Kuo takes no days off.
No days off. This is my media day, Ben.
Yeah, welcome to NBA Media Day, where guys simultaneously answer questions about the coming season.
This is where I put on my crispiest uniform. I'm not in the best shape physically, but I'm going to flex for the cameras. It's a big day.
It's kind of a weird tradition because guys wear their uniforms for photos, but there's no basketball taking place. They're kind of like baseball managers.
Yeah. I think about that with photo shoots all the time, how ballers have to come into a studio with their normal clothes and then change out of them and put on uniforms. And it has to be kind of odd. Maybe they're just so used to it. But I guess with some like editorials, like celebrities have to change outfits like 15 to 20 times.
NBA Media Day seems like a vestige of local media style reporting about sports, where they would bring all the local stringers, those guys would get interviews, and they would come out and write stories about it, and they've kind of turned it into a larger, more national event where we're supposed to kind of celebrate it. But hey, look, it means the season's close. That's going to be my takeaway. I'm not mad about NBA Media Day. I'm not excited about it, but it does mean the season is 3 weeks away.
The best part of Media Day is always seeing who put on like 40 pounds. We don't care about who lost 40 pounds. I want to see the guys who come in chunky. There was that one season, Dion Waiters, the island got bigger.
Yeah, have we seen any, and to be clear, this is not shaming.
No,
we're not saying it's bad. We're just wondering who's extra girthy.
Who can Kyle Lowry be topped as the king of the thickness hill?
Can he out-thick himself?
Ooh, thickception.
I think that's kind of like could God heat up a burrito too hot for himself to eat it type of thing? Could Lowry be too thick for Kyle Lowry? Like, the answer is no, but his thickness is universal and all-encompassing, so it's hard to say.
That's right. There's no going back from Lowry. No pun intended.
Well, speaking of God and Jesus, I went to Kanye's Jesus is King listening event last night.
Let's get this report.
So, I hadn't really kept abreast of Kanye's latest endeavors. I knew an album was coming out. I knew he did the religious-based Sunday events in Los Angeles on a mountaintop with gospel choirs, some celebrities, maybe some Hillsong guys in Saint Laurent tight pants. I don't know who was going there. It's very, very exclusive. But he did an event here in New York City last night at the Palace Theater, I believe it's called. I could have the name slightly askew, but it's this really beautiful performance venue in Washington Heights, and it's huge, and it's got all these gilded images of like Shiva on the walls, and the ceilings are gold. It's just a gorgeous building.
It's an amazing place for sure.
Oh, you've been there?
Yes, they've been doing some shows there once in a while. Did
you go up there for the Arcade Fire show?
No, I really loved that band once, and however much I loved them at one time, I maybe don't love them equally as much now.
And you don't love them enough to go to Washington Heights?
No, I don't. Wow. But back in that album was perfect. The first album was really great, so no Arcade Fire kink shaming here.
No, that's a great band. Mm-hmm. And they've got a baller.
Yep. Will plays, and did he play in the celebrity game during the All-Star weekend festivities?
Yeah, I think he was MVP.
Wow. I thought Quavo was MVP.
Oh, maybe in the past. I think he has been a celebrity game
He's tall, man.
All-star MVP, yeah. Anyhow, so yes, beautiful building. And Kanye had an event there. And I kind of heard about it last minute and managed to get on the list and went up there. And as I was on the train, after transferring from 2 other trains, there was like some, very young kids, 21, late teens. I don't know. They were like still of collegiate age or younger. And they were riding up there and they were so excited. And they're like, yeah, this is going to be lit. They said lit like 100 times. Like everyone's going to be there. Travis
How young
Scott.
are these people? Sound like 30-year-olds to me.
I know, it's true. But I would say they were like 22.
Right. Fair.
But I know what you mean. Were they like marketing executives in their like mid-30s?
Right. Did they work for Sprite?
I didn't say they were cool. I just said they said lit all the time when they were kind of young.
True.
But they're like, oh yeah, there might be a runway show. Like, who's going to be there? All these people. And I was kind of reevaluating. Oh, maybe this is what a listening party is like in 2019. Because in the my journalistic days writing about music, they were certainly not events at all. They were a bunch of people in a room and they'd play the album like twice or 3 times back to back. You try to get some 40 Below vodka and some Red Stripe and you'd be on your way. Anyway, I get up there, kind of a mob scene, ran into a few Cookie's friends, Will Welch of GQ, who was on the show last season.
Nice.
Despot was there.
Nice.
Who is was our contemporary on No Wave, on the Tuesday No Wave run, if you will. But anyhow, they showed a short documentary film that was like Kanye in a geodesic dome talking with like Sheck West and ASAP Bari about what he wanted to build, and he like looked at this little inflatable thing. He's like, that could be a toilet or a bathtub, and everyone just kind of like nodding at him. It was really weird. There was a lot going on, and then it went into this documentary with gospel singing, and there'd just be the camera on a woman's face for 5 minutes as she cried, and then he eventually got to the album. So I guess what I'm juxtaposing here is the excitement that we have experienced about a Kanye event in New York City.
It's a tradition.
Right, like during Fashion Week when he shut down FNO and was staying at the Mercer and just turned into like an outdoor street festival of hype beasts. And there was that same kind of energy for the people going up there, but it was for a gospel album. It's a straight up gospel album.
Right, and it's called Jesus is King.
Yeah, so he played the whole album, and every song is about Jesus. The production
sounds like a Knicks season schedule to me.
I broached that theory to someone there and like, what are you talking about? I'm like, oh, you're not versed in Andrew Kuo's Knicks theology. Oh, well, you're bad.
You will not be going to Knicks heaven, sir.
Is there heaven for a Knicks fan?
This is it, baby.
I don't know who the martyr is, if it's James Dolan or the Knicks fan. I tried to figure that out last night on the spot, and I'm like, I have to defer to Kuo on this. He is the master of the scrolls.
Yeah, it's the straight shot.
Kuo is the one who unfurls the sacred Lynn jersey to read the sweat marks.
What if the straight shot came out at the Kanye thing?
Anyway, my very non-critical review, because I just heard it one time. He played half of some songs, some a couple times. It was coming out of one large kind of speaker that obscured some of the vocals, but you could kind of get the gist of it. Was that the music sounded really nice.
I'm looking forward to it.
The music was good, and I don't know about necessarily the rapping. It was really like boomer shit.
How is he getting worse at rapping? I guess all rappers get worse. My bad. I answered my own question.
Yeah, it was very specifically Jesus-y. And I guess people can draw their own conclusions, but I thought one of the things that Kanye did when he was younger was that he kind of posed that confliction between having new money, trying to be sort of conscious about things, having these impure thoughts, and being messy. That was kind of Kanye's deal. You'd want to hear a Kanye record because he was a mess, and he might say anything. And hearing him just be like, it's not about the IG, I don't even like likes. And you're just like, oh God. It was so much of that. It was
I'm not a businessman. I'm a businessman.
But it was just a lot of put down your phone and come to Jesus, and Jesus will forgive you and he won't betray you. And it was just a whole album of that. But I think there's a couple ones. There was one specifically where he was talking about like clothes like Sunday, you're like Chick-fil-A. And I'm like, oh, that's going to be like a club banger. It just fit so well into...
Oh, there was a banger in there? He's not known for his bangers.
It's not really a banger because there's no drums on it, but you could just you could
Right,
you
right.
know that's going to get dropped in the club and everyone will sing along. When he's like, "You're like Sunday, you're Chick-fil-A," you're like, "All right, I already know it. I can feel it being played at Kinfolk right now." Mm-hmm. But it was an interesting event to see the people who would have always been at every Kanye event there for a gospel show, and they took your phones away and they put them in these little cloth cases that have a magnetized enclosure.
Those are really freaky.
Some dude had a demagnetizer on him and popped it open and started taking videos and then got kicked out.
I saw some videos. Some videos got leaked of the event.
Yeah, someone
I was
we know was
wondering
taking
how
videos.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Leave it at that.
And this is the same thing that happened in Detroit a few nights ago before, right?
Yeah, he did it in Detroit. He did it in Chicago. I'm not sure if he played the whole album, but he may have also done it in Queens on Saturday. And then this was in Washington Heights on Sunday.
This is awesome. No one else is doing this. It's great. Even though all the, we can poke at all the details of it, but what a cool thing.
Well, let me run this by you because I have no idea. Is Kanye a troll? Is he a simpleton? Is he just a conflicted person in search of his moorings? Like, what leads you to go from Make America Great Again to gospel? Is this all just sort of chicanery? Is it looking for attention? Or is it someone really struggling to figure out his place in the world?
I mean, the word troll, how I read it is that word has a lot of meaning, and sometimes it has a wrong meaning. I think he is maybe a contrarian, and there's various degrees of contrarianism and speculation and doubt. And I think what he's doing, yeah, he is being a troll, but more so he's just being a contrarian and trying to find his footing as an artist. And along that way, I think he has to elicit a reaction from certain people in order to feel like he's doing something. And that may come off as those words that we label him as, but I think he's just trying to find his way and trying to like stay in this mindset of someone who doesn't make the same album twice.
There's a few different vectors here because you've got someone who's been in the public eye at this point for a long time, and it's been magnified due to his marriage to Kim Kardashian and all of the controversy that swirls around both her and him. And it's created a situation where he justifiably believes that everything he thinks or says is by default interesting. And that's a really dangerous place to be in. Well, if you're someone who's in the field of creative output. It could be liberating, but it's also dangerous because you don't have to actually have self-analysis, and you're not even getting honest feedback from the people around you, perhaps. So you just say something and people respond. At the same time, he's in a profession where it's a little bit like you're a shark. And if you stop moving and you stop getting attention, you die.
Yeah, I think we can.
So he's kind of balancing being in this bubble while also needing to appeal to people outside of the bubble while no longer being able to actually access it or be a part of it.
And he may not be that appealing anymore either. I was hanging out at I was having a couple drinks with some music industry people, and my brain doesn't really know the details and the data of that world, but I was talking about all these superstars in my mind, and they were just breaking numbers down for me. To my surprise, someone like, or maybe not to my surprise, someone like Lorde maybe like isn't pulling in the attention that I assume she is, or someone like Lana Del Rey, or even Taylor Swift now. Like, it all changes. And Kanye, at one point, I remember going to the graduation listening party, and that was really fun. And I felt like that was kind of at a certain peak of his musically. I think that album was pretty incredible. And it felt like he was a different artist entirely, I think, looking back. And to get back to the Knicks thing, like, in order to understand the Knicks better as a fan, I've kind of been like doing some like casual research on religion and Christianity and all that. And to your point that you just were talking about, like his responsibility as someone with words and someone who presents ideas, and how reckless that he could seem. A lot of times, and I may be getting this wrong, I'm just a tourist here, but if you're the chosen one, you don't have to get everything right because you're forgiven in every step, because you've already been chosen as the one. So there are actually no mistakes you can make.
Yeah, I don't know if Kanye is into the Pentateuch and the Old Testament or the new one. I can't say. Right. I know the basis
he may not even know the differences, right. You know.
I don't know if he is a big scripture guy. I don't know. There was a few pieces like Romans, and I forget what the other one was from, but you know, that they put up on the screen because it was the film that went along with it. But I would say, based on Kanye's career, he's always talked about the things that were going on in his life and what he was experienced in a way that many rappers don't do. And that's what humanized him and in part made him a superstar and made him such a compelling listen, that when Kanye dropped a song, you were indebted out of curiosity to check it out. And there's other artists like Jay-Z who have made a career essentially redoing the same sort of hustler's anthem, just through various lenses of age.
He was so good for so
like,
long.
Okay, now I'm 20 years removed from the game. Now I'm 30 years removed from the game. I can just offer a different perspective on being a drug dealer turned into a mogul. And I'm just going to look through that prism from a slightly askew angle indefinitely. Or you can be Future, and it can be dreary, desolate, like Xannies and lean talk for as much as you feel like.
And Young Thug, who tries a different thing this time and doesn't have the success Kanye does. He moves away from years of doing the same thing over and over amazingly, and then the new album comes out and Thug has changed, and we don't follow him the same way we follow Kanye.
And that's why Kanye is in a perilous situation, because he's someone whose career is based on talking about his life. And when his life has been now sequestered out in Calabasas with the Kardashians, going into rehab, probably therapy, things like that, he doesn't have a lot to talk about. Or he doesn't have a lot to talk about that he's comfortable talking about. Or maybe that's why he's like, it's religion now. That's what I'm feeling. I'm feeling this. And it's like, he may not have the same capacity to talk about the intricacies of society and how he relates to those things in the way that he did a decade ago.
Yeah, and I think we're talking about kind of the artistic procedure, right? And especially for someone like Kanye, who lives in this very active, intense space where he's allowed to explore every corner of everything. And you're right, he may... The motivation of some of these projects seem whimsical at first, but it's just a part of his life. He may be thinking about death a little bit more because he has kids, his mom, and maybe religion's always been an undercurrent in his albums, which it kind of has been, and maybe he feels an obligation finally to really scratch that, or, you know, hit that target over and over to see what kind of how he feels about it.
Well, speaking of mortality, there is a certain memento mori to, no relation to Daryl Morey, to the arc of a rap career, where no one has a rap career except for probably Jay-Z that spans an incredible length of time at the same prominence. And even Jay-Z fell off. And he has not put out great albums in a long time. He still remains a capable rapper, and he's a superstar and all that stuff, but people aren't checking for Jay-Z like that. And Kanye may have exceeded his bandwidth as a good rapper, as a rapper that is someone we want to hear making records and writing lines or reciting lines or whatever it could be, maybe we've just passed the expiration date on that. He was a compelling rap artist for a long time. Maybe his real role at this point is just being a producer.
Or influencer, for lack of a better word. Some guy who does something that we care about, and it's an amalgamation of all the things you're talking about. I immediately went to see how the merch looked. I immediately went to see if he had dropped the album art or a new colorway of his shoes.
The merch was pretty cool. There were some ones that said like Jesus is King on the front, but other ones had the New York State emblem on the back. They look cool.
Yeah. It was the influence of the rave scene in the Matrix is underrated, because the merch for this round of Kanye stuff reminded me of the Wyoming. It was a continuation of the Wyoming look, and it wasn't quite grungy and it wasn't quite primitive. They were still sophisticated, but the drabness and like the browns and the grays, I really appreciate. I can't wait for the new Matrix. I want to see what they can.
I feel like he made specific New York gear, which was a shrewd idea because it had that New York State insignia and said New York on it. So I don't know what was a constant in terms of the Sunday service, because I didn't really see that the beige Sunday service.
That has to be a Travis Scott influence, because he was making site-specific arena merch for his last tour. So the last round of Travis Scott shirts had Knicks logos on them, like One Night Only, MSG, New York Knicks, you know.
Who do they think they are? Cookies Hoops?
I mean, this goes far back. Like, I think I've seen old vintage Paul Simon shirts of where he played. Billy Joel, Giant Stadium, right? Grateful Dead. Didn't they have Giants logos on them at one point?
I've got a Grateful Dead shirt that's a Charlotte Hornet shirt. That was from a Charlotte show.
No.
Yeah, same colors of the tie-dye on the back. It says Charlotte.
That's awesome.
And it has dudes playing basketball on the front and like what appears to be Hornets uniforms.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
That's a nice piece of merch.
Yeah, hold on to that.
But yeah, when Travis Scott went to the Garden, they said it was just cobwebs and dust, and you just heard like Keith Van Horn echoing throughout the empty antechamber.
All rappers will be compared to Keith Van Horn moving forward.
So anyway, there's my report from the Kanye festival.
I'm always down to talk Kanye. I think his relevance throughout all these years is such a skill. And I know he said some wild things that I personally and Cookies probably disagrees with right away, but man, there's only one of him, and I just am grateful that he's still doing stuff people care about, even though it's not, Jesus.
Now, just to be clear, when you say you disagree with some of the sentiments that he's expressed, you're talking about the line about bleaching assholes, correct?
That's the one.
That would be the one.
When I heard that at MSG, I was so psyched. I was like, that's hilarious. Like, it just felt like Eddie Murphy Raw. I'm like, oh, it feels like it's from a different time. And everyone was outraged about that, or just like maybe making fun of it. But when you were at that MSG thing, right?
Yeah, I saw the show.
That line just had me cracking up, and all my friends, or a couple of my friends in the room, were just texting me like, did you hear what I heard? Was that right? Super fun.
Well, speaking of bleached assholes.
Nice.
There's an inquiry for the impeachment of the President of the United States.
More like tanned assholes. Hey, man, he's the president of our great country. Put some respect on that name.
I mean, like, what's
going on, man?
I guess the starting point is this slippery little eel. Is every time you try to grab him, he just like squirts out between your fingers and as like a little greased pig.
Yeah. It's sometimes I think if you let someone just be themselves, they'll just constantly be themselves. And he's gotten away with so much, and he just couldn't help himself, man. It just reminds me of a ton of like basketball stuff. Like, oh, I'm Dwight Howard, I'm turning over a new leaf. I'm like, man, We know you. We don't even hate what you do. You're Dwight Howard.
You know, one of the tricks of the trade when you're a journalist and you're interviewing people is to let people talk. And it sounds simple and obvious, but a lot of times that doesn't happen, right? So you'll ask someone a question, they'll answer it, and you'll move on. But if you stay silent after you ask a question, they'll just continue and they'll give you a better answer. It's
That's
like
how
a very
Twitter operates.
Yeah, so with Trump, it's always like that. You just let him talk. And I think the best thing is to keep nudging him and prodding him and poking because he's demented.
Yeah.
And he's an idiot.
Yeah.
And he's doing bad, nefarious acts left and right.
Yeah.
So as long as you keep him talking, he'll do this kind of stuff all the time.
I love it when he is talking to the press and he says something like, it's called quid pro quo. Do you guys know what that means? And the press is like, go on, tell us, keep on going. He's like, I can't believe you guys have never heard of this. So like, no, tell us what it means.
I mean, just get that man on the stand and just let him talk for 2 hours. You're like, all right, lock him up, boys. Just like, he can't stop himself from saying incriminating things because in his mind, he's right. He's got a brain full of worms from Breitbart, from Fox News, from whatever racist airport grandpas are funneling it into their earbuds. Mm-hmm. Like, this is who he is. His brain is a churning cauldron of garbage that all is based on grievance and inaccuracy and just meanness. So you just let him talk.
I was like crossing my fingers all of last week to continue our conversation from a couple cookies ago. I'm like, do not declare war on Iran this week. Don't do it. He's like, guys, as a press conference, I know this whole impeachment drama is hanging over your heads, but I must go to war against Iran. I'm like, no, don't do that.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know if they'll like do the impeachment, but this is kind of a open and shut case. Whether it brings him down or anyone from the Republican Party actually sides against him, I mean, he just said what they did, and it's impeachable. Like, I mean, he said it. Like, I'm not a constitutional lawyer here, but this doesn't need to be a crime.
It doesn't even
need to be anti-constitutional. It's like he used the powers of the state to help himself in a future election. Like, you can't do that, and he said it.
Which is what the whole Mueller report was about. Like, this has just been the constant. It's Dwight Howard. He's just been the same for a very long time. And it's like, well, that wasn't real. Like, I got away with that. I'm like, no, you've been the same guy on the Lakers forever. But
this dirty, corrupt mobster who's been fudging things for 5 decades, if not 6 decades. Yeah. This time, he's going to play it straight.
Yeah. But also the surreal part of this recent cycle of news is this actually goes into policy, because sometimes it feels like gossip when he fires someone who didn't really do anything anyway and replaces him with the same guy who won't do much. It just feels inconsequential, but finally this feels consequential where, I mean, Pelosi took action, but what I was really thinking, I would relate everything back to basketball. And
thank God it is a basketball podcast, I've heard.
And this idea that the Democrats and Republicans are just one and the same thing, and all they're doing is perpetuating their lifespan and relevance, because one is always trying to take down the other, and it feels like a victory from different ideologies, but really it's just one thing. And in a broader way, they're just playing this kind of song and dance where either one of them is going to be in power, and they're kind of like they work simultaneously with each other. And I think about that with the NBA and an idea like parity or revenue sharing. When a team like Golden State dominates, or a team like the Rockets do smart things over and over, and then a team like the Knicks don't, I'm like, oh, this is just the same thing. We're just perpetuating this idea of the NBA where things just swing back and forth, and eventually the Sixers are going to get Embiid and Simmons and be good again, and then when they're done, maybe Charlotte will be good. It's just one thing.
And that's why it's so irresistible to find the mini struggles within that. And are you a Lakers guy or a Celtics guy? And let's make these juxtapositions within a framework that actually, as you're saying, is just an ecosystem. But we find these little places and we take stands. Like, okay, I'm a Democrat and I'm a Republican and we're the Lakers versus the Celtics. But the game is still basketball.
Yeah, and it's kind of sad, and it kind of takes away the idea of like free thinking and free will, and very much related to our Kanye conversation, not to get too hokey about it, but it's the participation seems so intense and so many, it seems to have so many peaks and valleys, but really what we're doing is we're all just watching the same constant thing.
I wish there was a great segue into basketball, but do we want to talk a little bit more about, since we're leaning towards perhaps anarcho-communism talk, with another strike against the hated middleman?
Oh, okay.
Just because this is if movie passes off the table, and we got to talk about one nefarious, vile company, and that would be Seamless. Listeners to this show are aware of my disdain for the middleman economy, and specifically Seamless, which I have now avoided using for 5 months or something like that, which applies to Grubhub and Try Caviar. They're all been banned. They've been relegated off of my phone.
I've been trying to figure out, not to challenge you on this, I'm not against the middleman industry because I don't think
that's something a middleman would say.
Well, in a ways, cookies is a middleman business, Ben.
Bullshit.
We're not playing the games.
We play the game. We create the content. The interns make the memes. The interns are the middlemen.
That's right. The gruel is the middleman. The lack of gruel, the empty space is the
less
middleman.
gruel is the middleman.
But like, where do we stop? Do you use Uber or Lyft? Or I don't want to get you. I don't want to have a gotcha moment, but there's so many middlemen that we use that we don't think of as middlemen.
Of course, and this is that same cliche of you're complaining about society, yet you live within it. Like I will take a yellow cab when I can. If I can't get a yellow cab, I will use, out of those systems, I will use Juno because I think they're slightly better, but I don't know. I haven't used Uber in ages.
I mean, I love to eat fish, but I don't know how to catch a red snapper. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but aren't you buying it from the guy who bought it from the fisherman? Like, that's
a middleman.
Yeah, but a store is different from these like tech platforms. This is very tech specific.
Okay, I mean, we could talk about WeWork, which is like the ultimate middleman idea, who just pulled back their IPO, right?
All I'm saying, Kuo, is that the tide is turning. The middleman is going down, and you can ride this middleman train to the depths, or you can get with the side of ethics. Uber going down. WeWork going down. Seamless is now being investigated by New York State because they're bad.
Is Amazon going down? Is Google going down? Is Apple going down?
It's a matter of time. And we're all going to start using, I don't know, Metacrawler and Bing to get Google out of the paint.
We're going to scream out our window. What are Donovan Mitchell's stats? Shooting stats.
I'm just going to
5
use
for 14.
That phone line that only us boomers remember. You'd actually call up and ask people shit on the phone.
Well, why do you have to go through a phone company, Ben? Why can't you just ask them face to face?
I agree. I wish that service was available. You just have a personal, knowledgeable person who rolls with you.
What a lot of people would say, we're in the boom of the middleman economy, and these companies going down are just poorly run. And Amazon is not poorly run at all, and kind of scary because they're so efficient. I went to an Amazon store in downtown New York the other day where you just go through with your app and you can just take whatever you want off the shelves and walk out. And I just bought like a bubbly water, maybe some candy. It was really odd because it has the veil of eliminating a middleman, but it creates that economy more so.
You know, I've been compromising myself. I've been sullying my pristine ethical soul by shopping at Whole Foods, despite the fact that it was purchased by Amazon. And I knew I was doing this. I was befouling myself. I'm well aware. And as I said, I'm imperfect. I'm just trying to live in this society as ethically as I can. But
when is your gospel album coming out?
very soon. It's called Stalin is King. But last time I went to a popular Brooklyn Whole Foods, they had intentionally cut back the amount of workers. So there were very few cashiers. And they were funneling the long line of irritated people into self-checkout aisles. And I'm like, this is fucked. This is fucked. They are intentionally trying to get rid of workers, and they're gearing towards exactly what you're talking about, the store where you just walk out with your stuff. And I'm like, Whole Foods did not seem to be about that life until Amazon stepped into the building.
Oh, it was swift. It was a right turn.
And Amazon is there like, yep, do you want to step right up and use the self-service? And I'm like, no, I want to go to a cashier. I want you to understand that I value a cashier's job more than I do doing their work for free.
Yet you mock Andrew Yang every week on cookies. What's up with that? His whole platform is automation.
Yeah, but he's just trying to automate it, and then everyone will get their cash. I'm anti-automation.
Oh, right. He wants more robots.
I want to roll it back. He loves the robots.
Right. He wants more robot shipping everywhere.
Anyway, they're going to take down Seamless. And my theory is that the only reason Amazon and Google do not get hammered by talk of antitrust stuff is because media companies rely on them for their existence right now. And they're too in bed with them to detach in the way that, say, the Sixers and the NBA are inherently internecine in their existence at this point. And these publications exist at this point mainly online and via affiliate marketing deals where they get a cut of products, where they rely on search engine results. They can't go hard against Google or Amazon or Facebook. And if they did, they would jeopardize their short-term existence. But if they all did it in concert, those places would get shut down in antitrust legislation across the board.
I just saw that Bill Gates documentary where, Microsoft had to defend themselves against antitrust laws, and they ended up winning. And it's dicey. You can still look back on it and see where the gray area is. And
there is no way in hell having Amazon with this amount of power and stature and control of the market is healthy for the economy or anybody else. It is clearly a huge problem that everyone is afraid to address.
The fear comes from the idea, the construct of capitalism, and however you feel the U.S. exists as a quote unquote free market. And I think where people get really shook is I remember they were trying to limit the amount of Ubers on the street in Manhattan, and there could only be a certain number. They capped the number of Ubers, sort of like the salary cap in the NFL and the NBA, and it was unconstitutional because you're allowed to make a business, and if the business is in demand, you're allowed to open up a shop that people want to shop at.
But even in a highly capitalist state, you do have to worry about monopolies because that actually
that's why there's
perverts
laws.
The
Right.
idea, and that's what Amazon is currently doing, because as a predatory leech-like creature, a vampire squid, they are now assaulting all sides because that's the business model, where they're now like, we will make our own shirts and we will use our permutations to put our shirts at the top of every sales list. We will push our rivals down, and that's what they're doing. So it's not enough for them just to control the market share of the middle and gaining negotiating power and leverage against both consumers and the manufacturers and sellers of products. They now actually want to control the manufacturer on the industrial side. And that's just too big. You can't have that. You cannot have one company absolutely dominating online sales. It's too big a part of life.
And the people who would be watchdogs or whistleblowers are also middlemen, and the people who notice these things and take action against it are literally the people in the middle of a transaction trying to dictate fairness. And that's what I mean when I say, like, just to say middlemen are evil is fun, but like there's so many examples immediately where you have to change the wording of that, because what you're talking about is you want a middleman to come through and kind of legislate legality within something like Amazon and Whole Foods.
Look, the thing I'm most interested in is tampering. I hate the tampering. If I find out that Amazon is, I don't know, planning on re-signing Giannis Antetokounmpo to a max contract, I'm fining him. $50K, baby. Roar it out your pocket of your billionaire Sincoro Loco swilling owner.
The real issue is I don't think he's 6'3". I swear they're lying about that. We got to put down some laws and some fines.
What was the impetus for this rule change in which the NBA has declared that they need teams to supply accurate birth dates, accurate heights of players on the team? And one, I guess, what is the impetus for this? And two, why do teams even care about it being accurate?
I feel like coming up to the double draft in 2022, hypothetically, where they get rid of the one and done and you don't have to go to college in order to enter the NBA, I think they maybe set up like a portion of the NBA offices to just introduce transparency, being like, okay, they're going to get us on so many things. Let's just start clamping down on facts and the heights of people without shoes because that's really important, and we have to set a tone. So it's more of a cultural decision than it is an actual fix.
Right. On one hand, guys in the league office could say, wait a minute, we don't know guys' accurate ages and heights. That's stupid.
Yeah, let's get this down.
Can you give us the right ones? Because this is really dumb.
Yeah, that's all.
Why are they wrong? That just like gets me annoyed. So let's fix it. Or it's like creeping authoritarianism and a surveillance state. But it also could be like,
it's both.
All right, we're just listing Kevin Love at 6'10" when we saw that he measured at the combines in his stocking feet at like 6'7". We're just going to do this.
Yeah. It's like, can you guys just get this right? I remember Kevin Garnett was the joke when he was in his prime because he was such a useful player based off of matchup. So they would introduce him, I think in different seasons, his height would fluctuate by a good like 3 or 4 inches. And the sweet spot was, is he 7 feet or not? Because it would change the whole perception of the way you would guard him. And they were trying to manufacture advantage.
Also with the age thing, I guess it's like Thon Maker, like they found out how old he was when he was on the voting rolls for casting a vote for Walter Mondale.
Luol Deng played with Bob Cousy. No, but it's those African players who don't have records in the way that players born in America do, and we see sometimes there was a rumor Manute Bol was a good 7 or 8 years older than he actually was the whole time. And why wouldn't you do that if you were trying to present a player as a viable participant in this system that we've created in the U.S.? Like, you want to take advantage of everything because they have so many disadvantages going into it.
I certainly don't view those guys as the baddies.
No.
You knock 5 years off of your date of birth in order to make millions of dollars? How could you?
Yeah, do it. Prove it. Yeah.
You betrayed my trust in the interest in ages that scouts are drafting on.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky. And
go back to Sudan, man.
Yeah, and
you've besmirched the good name of
the New York
NBA.
Knicks. Yeah.
The New York Knicks.
Yeah, exactly. And this is kind of a stony question because like this gets down to like what we see and what we think we see and the perception of a player getting older. It's like, well, he's about to decline, so we can't give him this contract. I'm like, or he might not. It's hard to tell because every human is different, and at the rate they get injured and age is kind of on a weird sliding scale. So it's kind of an interesting wrinkle to put into projection.
Well, what I don't like about it is that due to advances in technology, it seems likely that in the way that the NFL has given people their prospective draftees the Wurlitzer test, which is supposed to, I guess, ascertain whether a player has the mental aptitude for football or not, into ways that maybe in the future they'll be able to brain scan players, and you'll be able to look at the way that their synapses fire and gauge how will they be able to respond defensively. Will they be able to find an open man? Is their basketball IQ going to be have a higher ceiling because of their spatial awareness, etc.? So when they're like, we want to know your date of birth for real, we want to know your height for real, I feel like there is a slippery slope where there's an erosion of privacy that could lead to, like, we want to get into your brain. We're already putting these little tabs on your jersey that monitor how fast you're running, where we've got cameras in the sky that are monitoring how many times you dribble, what your average speed is. We know what your heart rate is when you're practicing, and some of it's for the benefit of the player and the team, but ultimately, again, there's a slippery slope that's towards these guys being automatons.
And this has, if you look hard enough, you're going to find some really scary stuff. And I think about Michael Porter Jr. quite a bit and his injury. It turns out all of his family members have the same injury. Even his sisters who play hoops all tear their knees up. And that's like really sad, and I wish I didn't know that. And it doesn't seem like he's ever going to be healthy because of just how his genetics are. And it asks a lot of questions that are kind of depressing, and like, there's no way my kids are going to play in the NBA. There's zero chance because I'm short.
Exactly. And in the same way that Amazon or Seamless or any of these middlemen organizations are constantly trying to find ways to get more market share or fritter away at the edges to earn more money, we have the same thing happening in the NBA, where there are billion-dollar companies, and they're always going to seek a competitive advantage. This isn't back in the days when Vlade Divac was smoking in the locker room and Donald Sterling was saying madness, and it just was all under the radar. These are incredibly valuable commodities and properties, and players are viewed increasingly as almost like racehorses in a way. And if you bungle a first-round draft pick, it could cost you millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. So you have this thirst for information. And again, it intrudes on privacy. And there's by necessity.
Yeah. And there's always going to be people, middlemen, who come in and try to fix this and try to make parity and try to do all these things that we make fun of because they don't quite work, like the lottery, revenue sharing. But that's an attempt to reel it in a little bit. And for some reason, we always get to the discussion of simulation, but this has just been progressively getting to a point that is predictable. And I think any sci-fi geek would have predicted this 10 years ago, 20 years ago, that sports would end up here with science and what technology has allowed us to discover.
Well, you had just mentioned with Michael Porter Jr. and genetics. And isn't that where like the final battleground is?
CRISPR is terrifying. That's the scariest idea to me of any idea over global warming, over nuclear power. CRISPR is just very horrifying, I think.
Well, explain to people what that means.
It's like we've discovered a sequence of genomes in DNA that we can shuffle and alter the way life exists on the planet. So in the simplest form, we could engineer a Michael Porter Jr. that doesn't have a knee injury because of just rearranging a sequence of genomes. which is terrifying, and it creates this whole idea of Gattaca, or all these sci-fi people have been talking about this forever, but it's real, and they found it, and as a community they're trying to put the clamps on it as a scientific community in the world. But there's a couple of scientists in China who have just gone ahead and experimented with this. It just kind of fucks up the whole fabric of the way you think things are, because I could have a son that plays in the NBA if I wanted to.
And this applies to the NBA in terms of, okay, we need a blood test to go along with a DNA swab to go along with your hand measurements and your standing reach and your shuttle speed, etc. And then we look at your blood work and we look at your DNA and we say, you are genetically predisposed to aging faster than someone else, to knee injuries.
Like, do you want to know when you're going to die?
Getting tired faster.
Yeah, it's like that science fiction thing. Do you want to know when you want to die or not? It's like, I'd rather not know.
I hate it so much when a mysterious stranger comes to my door with a box and says, like, if you press this button, someone out there will die.
I thought that was so ridiculous. Press that thing for $1 million. Press it. It's like, oh, I'm the one. Damn it.
I hate when that happens. A mysterious cloaked figure comes knocking.
Yeah. Some weird guy in some tiny sunglasses shows me pills of different colors. That trench coat guy.
Oh, hate to be immersed in a digital underground subway system where I'm always fighting.
But that's an interesting question. If a cloaked man with tiny sunglasses came to my door and asked me if I wanted to know when the Knicks would win, I kind of wouldn't want to know. It's a Marty McFly thing. It's a Back to the Future thing. Like, I don't want to know. It's like,
select
I can...
the orange pill.
Yeah, orange and blue
pill.
Yeah. The bluesy pill.
All of a sudden, it's like everything just goes blue and orange around you, and you look down at your hands, and it's just like 10 little Keith Van Horns.
I'm rich. But yeah, I mean, it's been progressing to this, and I think we're going to have to deal with it moving forward, and I think we will as a society. There's always going to be a pendulum swing back, but it's happening in sports so quickly, where this was written about in the New York Times Magazine maybe a decade ago, about high school players trying to hit the jackpot of getting one contract in the Major League Baseball, and some of them going through Tommy John surgery just so they can get it out of the way, because essentially getting that one contract from whoever, like the Tampa Bay Devil Rays, is akin to winning the lottery for a poor family. You just want to sign that contract and not even play. And
even more so, when people talk about steroids in baseball, you look at the desperation and poverty of a lot of the guys who are coming up from a place like the Dominican Republic, and the calculus of fairness or the health ramifications of using supplements do not compare to the upside of making them major leagues. And I'm not even trying to say anything stereotypical about like, oh, Dominican players are using steroids. I'm just more saying that calculus may be different if you're in a different environment than, say, a suburban school district in California.
And yeah, you bring up steroids, and we frame steroids the wrong way because we think of Sammy Sosa and Barry Bonds and Mark McGwire. But what it really is, it's the last guy on the Knicks bench who's about to age out because the god RJ Barrett's coming into town. And he takes steroids in order to give himself an edge and maybe not get hurt, just to stay in the game. It's like
I can't knock anyone for using those kind of supplements. In terms of, I understand that this is a cutthroat situation. This is incredibly competitive, and there are only a certain amount of people on the planet who are allowed to have this experience and generate this kind of wealth from it. So if you tell me you need to use steroids to be in this position, I can't argue with you. I would, of course, prefer it if no one did, but again, the calculus that someone makes in order to say, you know what, I'm Rashard Lewis, I needed to recover better. I'm like, you know what, you got busted, your name was sullied. I can't say like, oh, you're a bad person for it. I don't know. I just don't have a moral judgment on it in the way that I think it affects what I think about your stats or how good you are, but I don't really apply morality to steroids particularly.
Do you think, and this kind of reminds me of the idea of an intentional foul in a basketball game, because you are conceding that you're at a disadvantage, and you're giving the opponent an opportunity to take advantage of your disadvantage, but the risk is worth it. So if you're going to get dunked on and you take an intentional foul, I always think about that in terms of steroids, being like, I just need to give myself a chance, and I'm willing to hurt my body and maybe even get busted and banned for life, but I need to take this risk or else I'm not even in the game. I get dunked on.
Of course, and you could apply this to, say, flopping.
Mm-hmm.
Is it sportsmanlike? No. But as long as the rules don't have a way around it, I don't have a problem with people flopping. I will get annoyed if someone flops and my team that I'm rooting for is penalized because someone flopped, but I don't have a problem with it.
No, flopping's fun. We all think it's fun. We pretend that we're mad at it, but it's
good. James Harden.
It's super fun.
I want to listen to Boot Camp in my man cave. I'm so mad.
Purple Haze is the best record from the aughts. But so let me ask you this question. Aside, like,
I just don't like trying to hurt players.
Yes,
that's my moral stance. I don't like Zaza. Yeah. Don't step under someone and hurt them. That's actually my only real thing.
That's fine.
You can hurt yourself, flop, do things. Don't try to hurt guys.
Yeah. Although steroids hurts people. But anyway, so related to this, do you think the advantage that someone gets from using steroids, do you think advanced metrics is an unfair advantage as well? There's debate as to whether teams and coaches are allowed to generate these advanced numbers in real time during games. Do you think we should cap that? Or do you think it should be an open playing field? If you want to use all these numbers in real time, go for it.
Hell yeah. Use them all in real time.
Yeah. Because
I don't even know what would be objectionable about that. Like, ooh, Kobe's 1 of 7. Like, oh my God, I thought he was 7 of 7.
Well, those. What I'm talking about is if there's an unfair advantage physically, these are all scientific things. Like, this drug is scientific. It's an unfair advantage of resource.
What would be an example of something that would be unfair? I'm just trying to speculate. Could it be our data shows that this player is slowing down, let's target him in a way that maybe you wouldn't have been able to gauge via the eye test?
Yeah, the ethics come in of just like boomers just saying it's not real and we shouldn't. But there's a paradox there, because the boomers paradox, because they recognize it as an advantage, but they don't believe in it, so they don't want it around. But it would be on and off stats in real time. It would be... this happens all the time where coaches counter moves from other coaches, and that's the gamesmanship of it. But a lot of people don't think you should be given an advantage of crunching numbers like that, in the same way that, like, certain...
to me, they hand out all those stats to people in the media at the half and after every quarter. Like, the numbers are generated. They're there.
After the fact. And you have to project it. This is the same as...
But how would you generate it as it occurs in a way that's any different from that?
Because you could just see the on-off in real time. So you just remove a player, put a player in.
But they do on-off.
Yeah.
Like NBA.com as it's happening. You see it.
Yeah, and the numbers are there. Like, the Yankees always have a binder of advanced stats that they reference.
I just mean, like, are we not allowed to see it? As I guess I'm not understanding what would be objectionable about NBA teams having access to the same stats that we have.
The debate's going on in baseball, where people think it creates an unfair... maybe it's like a cultural perception thing where they just don't want that to be a part of the game, and the real-time availability of all these data coming in is something they want to cap, and the gamesmanship of intuition and all those things. It's sort of like preserving the spectacle.
I don't know. I could see that idea of, okay, sports should be this closed circuit where once you're
Yes,
in the
right.
arena, it's about performance, also strategy and brains, and like, let's keep that intact. I would not have a problem if they said, okay, we're taking them out. That would be okay. That'd be all right.
This is the Serena Williams issue at the U.S. Open last year, where she was penalized and maybe lost the match because she was conferring with a coach, which is against the rules. And then when you look at it, all the coach was doing was like, let's go, Serena. It wasn't a big thing. And a lot of times, right, you're preserving, you want to create a vacuum of the experience.
In baseball, is it akin to, say, stealing signs? Is that what it would be compared to?
Sure, definitely. How come you're not allowed to get that platelet-rich treatment in the U.S. and how come you're doing it in Berlin? It's arbitrary, like it's all these things that we kind of create the falsehood of like competitive balance.
If everyone in the league is subject to the same rules, then that's cool. It's like the fantasy basketball conundrum, right? Mm-hmm. Where people are like, should we change the rules? Well, who cares? If we change the rules, we're all in it together.
And that conundrum is it a accurate simulation of what we're watching? And my answer to that is it can never be. So it's just whatever you want to make it. I think it's most fun when you make it easier to understand, and maybe that's the thing I was talking about in real life. If we make it easier to understand, it creates a richer experience. And when we complicate things with computers just generating probability, you change the nature of the competition.
So this is actually interesting in that it is very much tied to some thoughts I had about one of those lists that were circulating last week that we all got bent out of shape about by design. But look, we got 23 days until the season starts, so we're just going to bitch and moan about whatever list, whatever media outlet ejects.
I love lists.
We all love lists. They're great.
It's fun.
You're an artist who deals in lists. You're a list guy.
I barter in lists. My passion is lists.
I just love a list, man.
I do. What can I say, man? All day.
You were never listless.
I just want lists more, man.
So Bleacher Report did their list as opposed to, like, I don't know, ESPN's list or the Cookies list, which was accurate.
The most accurate.
The best thing about the Cookies list is that it was very incomplete and it left a lot of room for imagination.
I love it.
I think we listed like 2 guys, maybe 10. That was
the interns did.
I mean, we as a media entity, obviously, we had nothing to do with the creation of said list. That is something that you receive more or less gruel for your performance. But the Bleacher Report list was the top 50 players in NBA history. And I looked through it, and I was not mad. Until I saw Allen Iverson listed as an honorable mention. As an honorable mention, didn't make the top 50 with such luminaries as Dolph Shays or Paul Pierce or Isaiah Thomas. One of those 3 shat themselves in an NBA Finals.
And lied about it.
And lied to our faces.
The cover-up is bigger than the crime. Shout out to Poogate. Fantastic.
Unbelievable. That should have disqualified him. Allen Iverson, to my knowledge,
Asterix.
never pooped himself in an NBA game.
Not physically.
And if he did not create a scene. He did not delay a finals game to get carted off without revealing his soiled shorts. Took it like a man. But this is what I was thinking. Steph Curry is ranked at 10. Allen Iverson is ranked at below 50, whether that's 51 or 101, who can say? This strikes me as absolute bullshit.
Go off, King.
And it ties into what you were just saying. We have metrics now, right? That you can say, well, look, this is how good Curry is. Curry is this efficient. He scores this much. His team is this much better. We can look at all these things and say, it is true. He has won a championship. 2 of them didn't count, and he lost the other 2. He has won a championship.
He has as many as Ben Simmons, for the record.
That's the math that I'm dealing with. He has one more than Allen Iverson, as far as I can tell. But to the point, he has championships, he's won MVPs, he's a great scorer, he's the best three-point shooter who's ever lived, he's incredibly outliery, ubery efficient. Like, he's just a efficiency monster. And then here's AI, who is about the same size, who was a bigger star in his prime than him, scored similar amounts, but did not win championships, won one MVP and not two, and is not an efficient player. And yet, so one of them is basically discounted out of this conversation solely based on efficiency and the teammates that he played with.
Yeah, he didn't have Pau Gasol.
But it's crazy, right? Like, he didn't play with good dudes. And now he's listed as a top 100 guy in the NBA versus Curry, who is top 10. Like, what exactly is the difference? Is it just, are we just talking efficiency?
I think with Allen Iverson, the most interesting thing is always the cultural part of him and the on the court part of him. And I think he can easily be a top 30 player of all time, top 20 player of all time. But we've gotten so used to talking about him as a cultural figure that we kind of negate all of his achievements in his career statistically. And right, like, he had a great season with Carmelo, and it just kind of was tantalizing because for some reason they couldn't surround him with anything better than Theo Ratliff and Aaron McKee. But we know that he's a wonderful player. But are we too in love with him because we love him as also a cultural person?
Definitely. But also, this brings up this idea of technology and what we know and what that means to the game and how the game changed. And the game that Iverson was playing was different from the one that Steph Curry is playing. And Steph Curry is the absolute perfect player for an era in which the three ball went from a novelty to the basis of NBA offenses, where tempo exploded over the last decade, and all of a sudden everybody's running, everybody's chucking threes. The game is dominated by guards. The floor is completely spread out.
Drawing fouls.
And who would benefit the most of any player in history to an explosion in the prominence of the three ball and pace? A guard with really good teammates who is the best shooter of all time. Like, Steph Curry wandered into the exact moment in which his incredibly elite skill is rewarded more than at any other time in the history of basketball.
Yeah, and what can we do? Like, we can compare eras, absolutely, but we'll never know. Would Bernie Sanders have beaten Trump? We'll never know. And we have evidence going both ways of that argument. Same with AI versus a player like Curry. But we know Curry is one of the revolutionary players that we've ever seen until someone else comes through and we can compare him later.
So the second part of my argument here is that Allen Iverson is viewed as emblematic of his era, the early 2000s. What if he was actually in the exact wrong era, in the wrong system, and with the wrong teammates?
That's totally valid.
What if Allen Iverson should have been, say, playing at 110 possessions a game instead of fucking 90? They walked the ball up the court. They had Eric Snow bring the ball up instead of giving it to the league's best creator, scorer, distributor. It's like saying, okay, Harden, you're going to go off the screens and Eric Snow is going to bring the ball up the court because Larry Brown's offensive system was incredibly regressive.
Time to feed Samuel Dalembert. We're going Dalembert for this possession.
But it's wild. They played complete lineups of non-shooters around him. He didn't bring the ball up. He would do little curls or Iverson cuts, which are named literally after his little cut he would do to get the ball, so then he could charge into the lane with his right hand. And that was their offense. Yeah. And we're like, he was inefficient. Well, no shit, man. Yeah. So anyway, I love him because of his cultural significance, but I also take exception to the idea that Steph Curry is better than Allen Iverson. Does he deserve to be ranked higher based on all these things we know? Sure. Is he better than Allen Iverson?
Oh, yeah.
Fuck no.
Oh, I think he is.
Fuck no. Allen Iverson, to me, is better than any guard ever. He was unguardable in the same way that Curry is unguardable. And he led the league in steals. He was probably as good of a passer, and he was faster. So, I mean, maybe Curry's better, maybe not. But the idea that, like, someone was better than AI, like, better, just strikes me as, like, untrue. Like, Chris Paul might be better, but was he better?
Yeah, he was. Chris Paul and Steph Curry were better than Allen Iverson.
But I don't know. That's what I'm saying, is that they were both allowed to be the best versions of themselves in a way that Iverson never was.
You could rephrase that. It's not that you don't know. It's, there's no way to prove that the hypothetical is wrong.
Oh, everything I'm saying is also completely hypothetical. Okay. I'm just more arguing about this idea that, like, Ben Wallace was an incredible part of those Pistons teams. He was a superstar that might not be able to start in the NBA right now. I'm just saying the era and the style of the game have a huge effect on what we think about those players.
Absolutely. In everything. When we talk about rap music, it all has to line up. And in sports, it's the most depressing because you could see how certain players could have succeeded, and this happens a lot in baseball and football and less in basketball because, like, usage is a very confusing thing. And the devil's advocate argument to the Iverson theory is his usage was so high because of isolation and the way Larry Brown used him. Maybe in this era his low efficiency would prevent him from getting as many shots.
I just don't think he would be inefficient today. That's basically the crux of my
exactly
argument.
But
I look at him, he led the league in getting to the free throw line, not by rate, but because he shot so much. But he took a ton of free throws. He wasn't a bad 3-point shooter. He wasn't great, but it wasn't also an emphasis.
He's a volume guy. He's a ball stopper. He's Carmelo.
But I'm suggesting he may not have been in a different era because,
I mean, we'll never know. Right.
The year that you brought up before is one that is fascinating to me. When he had a full season with Carmelo Anthony and that Nuggets team.
Chauncey was there too, right?
No, he got traded for Chauncey, and then they went to the Western Conference Finals, which was one of those years that really served as an indictment of Iverson because they swapped out Chauncey for him and they got better. But at the same time, Chauncey was a really good defensive player. And they also got Birdman back, and they got Nene back, and it was a different team. But Iverson's offensive stats that year with Melo, in a system where they ran more, where he had more talented teammates, he had, I think, his highest efficiency of the season. He shot something like 36 or 37% from three. Like, he was a good 3-point shooter. He was third in the league in scoring, and he was like 7th in assists. And you're like, this was a glimpse of the absolute offensive mayhem that could have been caused by Iverson, and we didn't see it until he was like 33 years old. Iverson at 24, at the height of his powers before all those injuries, as a lead ball handler / distributor, he was unguardable. Like, completely unguardable. I can only think of a handful of unguardable guys ever. Harden, Iverson, Shaq. That's it. Kobe, fucking guardable, man.
Yeah, and we always talk about these players at the wrong place at the wrong time, and we always bring up Kevin Garnett, and to me that is the best example of what you're trying to say, because Flip Saunders didn't use him as a spacer he could have been, and he was just a lethal player with very few weaknesses, and they weren't showcased in the right way. And Larry Brown, the way he coached those Sixers teams, was kind of emblematic of an entire generation of post play, of isolation, of ball stopping, of D'ing up your man, like slapping court.
They had Allen Iverson and didn't run.
No,
literally
they did not.
90 possessions a game, man. The league average last season was 97 a game, I believe.
Isn't that funny that how they changed the rule of bringing up the ball and passing half court just to speed up the game and be like, don't let Eric Snow walk the ball up for 10 seconds.
That was a good idea.
Yeah.
But to the point you just made, Tim Duncan was better than Kevin Garnett because of the era they played in.
Mm-hmm.
If Kevin Garnett was allowed to play now, and Duncan is one of the best defenders of all time, he might still be a better defender. Mm-hmm. But if KG was a center today, with the range he had shooting, dude shot almost 50% over like 20 feet, over 18 feet, and then didn't take threes because he was a big man. Him being a absolutely lethal three-point shooter, also being a defender that was switchable to almost every position and a rim protector. If Kevin Garnett played today, he might be the best center of all time.
Yeah. And this is the loopy kind of NBA 2K video game simulation thing that we'll just never know. And I think that is these lists that you brought up with all these huge ideas in them. What we're doing is we're playing around with like our perception of our memories of these players and realigning them with things that we know now. And when these lists come out, they're fun because they're always going to lead to a discussion of comparing eras. And the NBA started in 1996, and I believe Allen Iverson was the first player drafted in the NBA.
And that's why I'm so protective of his legacy. As the NBA's first player, he is owed that respect.
Right, he's the logo. They call him the logo.
Imagine the amount of buckets he would give Jerry West.
Oh, man. One-on-one. AI, Bob Cousy. Who you got?
Who gets the Presidential Medal of Honor today, Kuz?
Kyle Kuzma's hurt, man. Yo, shout out to Atiba who took all those photos at Media Day for the Lakers.
Dude, the one of Boogie was the saddest. And I know Boogie's is now a persona non grata in some sense. Well, I guess we'll get more details on that. I don't know. Yeah. But he was involved in some nastiness domestically.
Yeah.
But there was a photo of him taken by Atiba, friend of the program and a former guest, big Lakers fan and Nuggets fan.
And Clippers fan.
And Clippers fan. And LeBron fan. And Kobe fan. Now
he's a LeBron fan. Previously, LeBron hater.
Maybe now a Harden fan, but used to not be a Harden fan. Whatever, that's enough of diagnosing Atiba's foibles. But anyway, he took a photo, and it's Boogie looking so sad, kind of staring at the ground and looking lumpy.
Man, and that's how the entire Lakers fan base should kind of feel, because you saw all these players, you're like, oh man, they really messed this summer up more than I actually thought. When you're looking at Caruso and be like, he's the savior, he's going to be the third of the big three. Like Kyle Kuzma's hurt now. It's optically just seeing all those players in purple and yellow, I'm like, wow, this is not good. I mean, they have two top 5 players, but
Danny Green's a good player, but he's also fairly elderly.
And yeah, they came out, I believe, and said that they're going to manage his minutes a bit, or it's going to be clear that they're just going to do that. And Kyle Kuzma, if he's healthy, can be scoring off the bench. That is a wild team.
Well, to some degree, we're seeing the impact both of the salary cap and the difficulty of clearing a lot of cap space in order to sign stars, and the crapshoot that is attempting to do that. Because we did see a tidal shift in which players, superstars specifically, went to big markets. You had Kyrie and KD go to Brooklyn. You had Taj Gibson. Sorry.
Big Taj.
But anyway, you had 2 superstars go to Brooklyn. You had 1 superstar go to the Lakers, and you had 2 superstars end up in Los Angeles with the Clippers. So 3 of the teams in the 2 biggest markets had an influx of absolute superstars, the cream of the crop out of NBA free agency, including guys who had bullied their ways into being traded. But those teams don't actually look that good. Do they?
I mean, I'm selling the Nets. I think Joseph Tsai probably got that phone call, and someone told him, KG and Kyrie randomly, out of nowhere, chose you. And I wonder if his weird genius Alibaba mind was like, we don't want Durant. That's a poor investment. And then someone talked him into it. It's like, well, he'll still put fans in the seats, and there's the idea of hope and all that. And he's like, okay, I'm in. But you're right.
Look, I think you have to sign KD if KD says, I'm willing to sign with you.
I've turned on that idea, though. We've said that for so long, like, you just have to sign that player. I say you don't have to sign him. That's just as valid as being like, we had no choice. We had to take a hurt KD who ruptured his Achilles. No, you just don't sign him.
I don't know. It depends on. I mean, look, we know the grim reality of players coming back from Achilles surgery. It's also Kevin Durant, one of the top 5 players of all time. I think you just have to kind of grin and bear it. But maybe you have another option. You know, if Kyrie and Kawhi were an option, maybe you say, all right, we'll take those guys instead. One's going to play next year. But that wasn't on the table either. Right.
And to your point, the smaller market teams and smaller market fans will cry foul that all these superstar players are going to the classic big markets. But they're just also creating leverage for themselves to make moves. I think the Bucks should scream loud and persistently about this. I think the Suns should, because there's no downside of them claiming that the deck is stacked against them. But then when you look at the actual rosters, and they haven't played a single game yet, the Lakers could be amazing, but the actual rosters don't look ideal. And parity is a really strange thing, but a lot can happen, and we know who the best teams are going to be. Basketball is predictable, more predictable than any other sport, but Brooklyn should be worried.
Well, right. So these 3 teams that are the winners of free agency to various degrees are also in a bit of danger. The Clippers gave away a lot of their future, and Kawhi's only got 2 years under contract there. The Lakers gave up their entire future.
The Rockets invested in Russ.
I mean, in terms of star mobility, it did not leave most of those teams in incredible long-term shape. So to some extent, the system worked in that teams who are trying to win a championship are sacrificing their future. And that was kind of the beauty of Sam Hinkie's system, not to bring Hinkie out of nowhere, but in the way that he had set up the Sixers, they would have still had assets, and they still would have been able to make trades. And Boston attempted to do that too, and it didn't work out for them because they didn't get the stars. But like,
the drafts were bad.
If Hinkie was still there and you had all these draft picks that he was amassing, then you're in a whole different position than like the Clippers are without their future, or the Lakers without their future, or the Nets banking on a guy coming back from an Achilles injury.
Yeah. And every risk is different, and I think the people in charge of the Clippers are smart, and it's hard to prove that the Lakers follow those same principles. But like, I really like what Sean Marks is doing in Brooklyn, and it may not seem like they are creating value moving forward, but they're willing to take that risk. And maybe we always talk about job security influencing the way these GMs act. And maybe they thought it was time to win now, because if they didn't show some results, they'd be cut short of their entire procedure.
Well, you should trust the procedure.
Always. Gordon Hayward.
But also with the Nets, they were kind of looking at a bit of a brick wall, in that they had done a great job scraping together talent that had been overlooked, giving guys a chance. And then it was time to start paying these guys. And it's weird because they parallel Boston to a certain degree, where they have some useful dudes who are coming up towards their second contract and will be paid well by someone. And they have to look at that collection and say, is this the foundation of a contender, or are we going to be locked into long-term contracts with guys who aren't good enough to win? And I think that was what Brooklyn saw in their future.
Yeah, for sure.
That Brooklyn's like, all right, if we pay Dinwiddie and we pay D'Angelo Russell, and we pay Karis LeVert, are we a 4 seed with 3 guys who are taking up 70% of our salary cap?
Yeah, man. Like the Zion Williamsons don't come along enough. There's not enough Kyrie Irvings or obviously LeBron James, but players that can give you a contending team just by themselves are so rare that the Nets did so well after they won that trade versus Boston. They still had to take this large risk in signing Kevin Durant because Karis LeVert doesn't put them over the top.
I mean, look at the obvious advantage of hitting it big on a late pick, right? Golden State's dynasty was built on getting Draymond for free.
Woo.
They had great players, but those guys were taking the lottery. They were not a contender without Draymond. All of a sudden, they get a superstar for free. Denver, where would they be right now? But they got a superstar in Jokic in the second round for free. Look at Utah, another contender. They got Gobert late in the first round, basically for free.
Giannis was a late pick.
Same, great point. Exactly the same. You can be Philly and you can have essentially the top talent in 2 draft picks be the foundation of your team, but you got to be bad to be there, and that was the whole process plan. But those other teams, they just got lucky. And you can't base a strategy on getting the defensive player of the year at like pick 27. You just can't predict that.
Yeah.
Because there was 25 other teams or 26 other teams that could have Gobert right now.
For sure.
Every team in the NBA could have had Jokic.
Yeah. And you need these players to be good kind of quickly before they sign their big first contracts. So not only do you have to get lucky with the Draymond, he has to start performing in year 2.
And this is why I think a team like Boston, who we can talk about another time in its entirety, is in trouble because they have to decide, are they going to max out someone like Jaylen Brown, who they've indicated that they will not? Are they going to max out a guy who's a Luol Deng Martell Webster amalgam? Do you max that guy out?
It's funny how Boston procedure fans talk about Tatum as possibly a top player in the NBA, but when money comes into it, are you willing to max him out? If he has the exact same season he had last year, I think Boston fans would throw all the hyperbole on him that he has a potential if he wants it more. But if it comes down to cap space, they might change their minds. And yeah, we're coming up against that question with Tatum.
And I think that's what Brooklyn saw and decided, if we can get 2 superstars as a package deal, we just have to do it, even with the risk inherent in taking on a guy who suffered an injury as grievous as Durant.
Yeah. And my contention recently is that was too big of a risk. But no Durant, no Kyrie. So as we found out during media day,
and they got DeAndre Jordan, so don't sleep on that. That was a huge pickup.
Wait, you mean ex-Knicks legend DeAndre Jordan?
What is up with Lance Thomas? Is he an inside man still working for the Knicks, but on Brooklyn?
Yeah, man, he's been goth his whole life, it turns out. I thought he just learned about Susie and the Banshees and Bauhaus when he joined the Knicks. Turns out he's been a lifelong Peter Murphy fan.
I mean, obviously he is from Brooklyn, but I do think he spent enough time at, say, Paul's Casablanca.
I seen him at Sway.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
he's in these streets. he was there on Goth Night.
I seen him dancing to The Cure.
I mean, seriously, he's there.
No, yeah, he's around.
Like, we're not joking. Like, he's there.
And he's a really nice guy too. Extremely goth. I mean, just staring at candles. If you're out just having a nice conversation with your friends and enjoying a drink in moderation, he's just staring at a candle in the corner.
Alone in my room staring at Randall's.
Hey, man, he's the only one who wanted to come here. Leave him alone. He's my guy.
Just because you guys bonded over free drinks at the Boom Boom Room, now you're staring at Randall's.
That's right, man.
Alone in my Boom Boom Room staring at Randall's. The Andrew Kuo story.
That's right. It's just a bunch of lists of where Randall falls top 50. Yeah, man, the Knicks. Oh, I'm excited for this season. Are they the most unwatchable team in the NBA, or are they extremely watchable?
The Knicks are definitely unwatchable.
But
after, well, I don't know. The Knicks are a curiosity.
Always.
Because would I ever subject myself or anyone that I loved to watching Taj Gibson
on Christmas Day? Come on, you surely would. It's a Christmas miracle. Big Taj in your living room on TV.
Like, you can't ask someone to watch Taj Gibson and Bobby Portis play. You can't do it unless there's a fight.
Oh, right.
The Knicks do have some intriguing lineups where it's like you could watch R.J. Barrett and Mitchell Robinson,
Smokes,
and Smokes, and like there are some cool guys that if you said set an alarm when these particular lineup combinations are on TV, I'd be, oh yeah, I'll check these guys out. Mm-hmm. But the problem is that you might get saddled with alternative lineups, and you're like, oh, it's Kevin Knox and like whoever else they signed. I don't know, another forward.
Such a bummer when they sign these old guys because it just like relegates but
Randall,
the young guys.
Knox. If Randall Knox,
I like
Mitchell
Knox.
Robinson,
I like Knox.
Smokes, RJ, like I'm down to watch that lineup. I'm down to watch those five guys play. I think Randall's fun.
Oh yeah, the only sore spot is Big Taj. I just started calling him Big Taj and I love it. It's just the old guys. I don't want to see Elfrid Payton play. Just those were the guys who kind of salted the whole promise of a league pass team of just young dudes chucking bricks.
The weird thing is that I like Elfrid Payton. I've always advocated that the Sixers should have signed him at times or traded for him when he cost nothing. Mm-hmm. But I don't like him for the Knicks in this role or this contract. I don't like it when Frankie Smokes is on the team. I don't like it when what's his name? The other Dennis Smith Jr. is there, who I am not a fan of particularly.
No, but we have to find out what he is and then maybe trade him or
right. And I think he should play. So I don't really know why Elfrid Payton is here. He's okay. He can play a bit. I think he's a good backup on a mediocre team. He could be a good backup or a useful backup on a contender. A guy who comes seventh off the bench and gives you some minutes. He could be a spot starter. But what is he doing on the Knicks?
No idea. I don't know what they're doing. I think they just started collecting players, and he was an odd one because he's still young, and you're right, he should be on a contender. Did I make this up? Did I dream this, or did I read about it? That the smell of his hair deterred teams from signing him because he was doing it out of solidarity. You know, his basically big, giant dreadlock a little bit, and the smell was so overpowering that it was tough to have him in the locker room.
I did not hear that. I don't think you made it up. That doesn't sound like something that you would come up with, but I did not hear that. I do not know any validity to that.
I do have fashionable hair bias, though. You know that when NBA players have really, really stylish haircuts, I'm like, that's the boomer in me. I'm like, shouldn't you be just streamlined and thinking about hoops, young man? I'm wrong, obviously.
I hear that. I also just don't get why the Knicks saw the need to go after Marcus Morris.
Oh, he's another one.
And Wayne Ellington,
Reggie Bullock. These are
Taj
not
Gibson. I don't get it.
They're all a bunch of Clarence Weatherspoons. The Knicks have done this forever. It's just that middling role player that costs too much money.
Just good enough that they'll win us 4 extra games so that we won't get a top pick.
Yeah, and this whole idea of leadership and experience just because a player has been in the league for a while. If they were so concerned with Taj Gibson's leadership and turned around and signed Bobby Portis, who sucker punched Mirotic, I'm not even sure what they're doing. But again,
was it a sucker punch? I don't even know if that's true. Maybe he just straight up punched him in the face. Maybe the bad guy here is Mirotic.
Well, the team took Portis' side, so that says a lot.
That's what I'm saying. But maybe he said something that required a face punching.
Can Dolan tell us who is the chosen one out of this lineup? Is Smokes the chosen one or not? Dolan, please. We need the soundbite.
But to your point about unwatchable teams, I do not think the Knicks are actually unwatchable. They're just a problem to watch because you have to flip off, and there's certain guys you want to see. I want to watch Mitchell Robinson play. I think he can be an incredibly special player.
When he gets hurt in game.
But my pick for an unwatchable team is the Detroit Pistons. That team, they are unbearable. You just can't watch them. Okay, so I'm going to start again, and I think I'll just jump in. I'm talking about the Pistons now.
Okay, do it. Oh, what do you want me to do?
Just hold on, and then I'll start again.
Okay.
But my pick for unwatchable teams, I think it's the Pistons. And look, Drummond really made improvements in his game. He's a good player. Blake Griffin made improvements in his game as well. Went from a dunking guy to one who's so skilled in so many different places. Great passer, great shooter. I mean, not a great shooter, but a good shooter from the perimeter. He's just a really skilled, special basketball player.
He's come through on his promise as the number one pick overall.
He absolutely has. Yeah. And with a few blips that were caused by injuries or punching people in the face.
Or a curse, a family curse.
Such things. But he has really delivered and continuously improved. And Drummond,
I'm a fan.
With these guys, they are good players. I just don't care about the Pistons. If you said the Pistons are going to win 12 games more or 12 games less than like they did last year, I just wouldn't care either way. Oh, the Pistons are fun now. No, they're not. Oh, they're awful now. No, they're the same.
Rebooting your product is an important thing for every company and every team in the NBA, just to give some sort of timestamp on what you're doing, because it seems like Andre Drummond's been a Piston for 45 years. Presenting them in a different light will help the whole thing. And I think they're playing in a new arena maybe this year, and I don't know. They are stale. I agree with you. Where a team like, you're going to laugh at me, the team like the Suns are never stale to me. I love those wacky Phoenix players, man.
You just love the turnover. Every year they hemorrhage first-round draft picks from like a year and a half prior.
And their jerseys look cool. Like the new one, it looks awesome just with the sun and the star, and that's it, and the number.
It's amazing how fast they churn through high picks. Like Dragon Bender, out of here. Josh Jackson, out of here. You were drafted 5th overall.
Marquise Chris.
You get 90 days to prove yourself, and then you can beat it, kid.
I love it. It's super fun.
But the Suns, to me, are still kind of interesting.
Oh,
and
always.
I think that's the problem, is that the Pistons' identity, the colors of the team, some of their players, it's just gotten so dreary that you can't trick yourself. You can't delude yourself into saying this is an interesting league pass team because they're a known.
Mm-hmm. And
like, we know Phoenix is going to be bad, but Rubio's fun. Maybe their new draft picks will be good. Maybe Ayton's going to improve. Maybe Booker's going to get better. Like, they're a known bad commodity, but we don't really know what it's going to look like. It might be entertaining.
Is it because the Pistons don't have a dribble bias player on the roster? Because you brought up Booker, and he's a little bit of he has gravity to him where he's controversial, and he's gonna prove one side right and wrong every night, and that's really fun. If he goes off for 70 points or he scores 6, it's a really enticing watch, and there's no player like that in New York or Detroit.
I agree. And the other teams that some might consider dreary, at this stage, it's really harsh to say a team is unwatchable before the season started, because people are on all these different levels, right? You've got a new look contender. You've got teams that were contenders last year that are slightly different, and we want to see if they can make the leap. I'm talking about like a Philly or a Denver. Teams that were good, but like, oh, okay, they look a little different now, but we can watch them. There are teams like the Bucks who aren't that interesting because we kind of already know they're really good, but they're really good. They have a superstar. They have the MVP. A team like Atlanta or a team like the Bulls, they've got some young guys. They have some talent. They have added a few pieces. They're interesting. They might end up being boring, but they're interesting now. I do think the Cavs are unwatchable, though.
I like Chetty. I'm a Chetty Osman fan. But yeah, I agree. There's nothing to see there. Kevin Love.
Don't care about Kevin Love.
Yeah, he's a good player. I think he doesn't deserve the fate of these Cavs teams, but I don't care about him.
No,
but,
he deserves to be traded. He deserves to be on
the Lakers.
the Knicks.
Oh, God.
But no, he would be great on the Lakers. I mean, not really because... No, he'd be great. He'd be great.
Yeah.
That would actually make a lot of sense.
And I think every year we say the same thing, but I'm really grateful to Daryl Morey because he could have just run it back. CP3 is a really good player, and he does get hurt, but he's excellent. But he just brings in Russ Westbrook because we gotta go for it, and we gotta make people interested in the Rockets again. And as a company, he's just like, this is the new face of it, and it might be like kind of a 1-for-1 move, but I really appreciate that he always shuffles the deck like that.
I wish Sacramento had been more interesting this offseason.
That's a good point. They let Willie Cauley-Stein go to Golden State, and I
kind of like him, but I am not a huge fan of
Bagley,
your boy,
Marvin Bogdan.
No, he's awesome. No,
Bojan.
your boy who was on USA Basketball. I'm just spacing here.
My boy, who I love, on
Harrison Barnes, your guy.
Oh, he's my dude. Yeah, no, I'm not mad at Harrison. Come on.
But that made their team boring to me. I know we've seen Harrison Barnes at the highest levels. We've seen him on a struggling team. We know Harrison Barnes. He's a guy.
That's a classic Knicks signing right there.
It really was. And that's why I'm disappointed that Sacramento didn't go weird.
Yeah. They had a surprising season. Do you think Bagley is going to be as good as he was at the end of last season?
I can't tell if he's going to be sort of an old school player. Will he get enough range to be an interesting stretch option, or is he kind of just going to be a post scorer?
He's a funky shooter.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Is he kind of like a classic power forward?
Yeah.
Are they going to play him as a center?
I don't know, man. He surprised me at the end of last year. I didn't think he had that in him, but I'm glad he did because better players are more fun.
I mean, but them bring in Barnes, Corey Brewer,
my boy,
Alec Burks.
Those moves don't matter, right? It's so interesting that Bogdanovich went off in FIBA, and he doesn't.
I guess Burks is gone now. I'm just thinking of what they did with that trade, unloading with the Cavs.
Yeah, but Bogdanovich has no path to playing time because they signed Barnes. It's really odd.
You know what, though? I take it back. I'm into Sacramento. Now. I'm into him. I don't like Barnes, really, but I like Dedmon. I like Rashawn Holmes. I like Corey Joseph. Those guys are kind of interesting.
Yeah, but they're 15-minute guys.
I am not into Trevor Ariza and Harrison Barnes, though, as your little, let's try to eke out a 7 seed with these guys. That's boring.
Yeah, man. Ariza could have been so useful on so many teams, but you got to take the money because life is short.
Life is short. Cookies this week was not.
No.
Let's pull the plug here at an hour and 45 minutes in.
The perfect plug?
It was the perfect pod, the perfect plug. We talked about Jesus and how he's king. Ooh, and how the kings leave
off.
Jesus.
King.
Cookies?
Cookies.
Cookies.